Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. And you guys know that I always like to stop right here and thank my guests for coming because I know that they're coming with a couple of things that I deem very, very, very important. And I want to thank them for coming and sharing. First is time. Time is one of the most beautiful commodity offered to mankind while we're here on this planet. And many of us don't know the value of it. We misuse it, but Doc is coming to share some of that here, and I am very excited, and I thank him for it. The other is his journey. That journey housed who he was and made him who he is today. And so I cannot wait for him to explain some of these principles so that you and I can um, uh, assimilate them into our being so that we can become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. Doc, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, folks. I'm Dr. G. Rex Kruhly, and I'm very honored to be here with Ken, and I'm looking forward to this program very, very much. Thank
So
you.
am I. I know, Doc, you have so much. It took me days to read all your information, and I still didn't finish. So
Oh,
I know you have done much, and I want you to tell them, the folks, the thing that has you have given birth to out of your journey that you live from and out of today, so that when they hear your journey, we can send them, they can identify with you and figure and say, wait a minute, Dr. G went through this. I need to get in touch with him. Tell them those things that you've given birth to.
okay. So at the present moment, folks, my position is I created I've been studying 53 years, and I created a system I call depth healing. The reason I call it depth healing is because it's deep. It covers
Mm.
a massive amount of area, and it's basically applied quantum physics using consciousness and energy.
Yeah.
So I'm in Thailand, just like Ken is. My clients are all over the world, and as long as I can see them or talk to them, I can change their life, their health, their circumstances, just about anything. There's very little that I can't affect because I'm working at a deep level of consciousness directly in their mind, and I have access to their field. I have access at a surgically precise level. Now, how did I get that? That's what took me a great many years. I studied privately, apprenticed under a whole series of great masters. So let's back way up to when I was a little boy, when I was about 3 years old. Um, I used to have a vision of saving the planet. And how was I going to do
Wow.
that? As a little boy, my dad used to buy me these big white Bristol board sheets, and I used to draw
Mm.
this huge flying saucer. The flying saucer was going to be like Noah's Ark. And all
Yeah.
the people and all the animals, I was going to take them to a planet where there was no war, where there was no, everybody
Wow.
was just happy and safe. So that continued all the way till I was 6. When I was 6 years old, I failed grade 1. I was the oldest son, my dad's first son. This back in Windsor, Ontario, in Canada, long time ago. And back in those days, if you can believe it, they used to publish the children's grades on the uh, city newspaper. There
Newspaper.
was only
Yeah.
there was only one
Wow.
city newspaper. It was called the Windsor Star. So my
Hmm.
father, Steve Kruhly's first son, oldest boy, uh, failed grade 1, and he,
Mm.
being my dad was sort of like a Charles Bronson. He was a real tough Polish man, boxer in World War II, naval officer, and he didn't know how to handle that kind of humiliation in front of his buddies. So the
Yeah.
family abandoned me emotionally for the rest of my life. Now, when that happened, so I used to be the jewel of the family because I was the oldest son, first son. I
Yeah.
had a sister 9 years older. So all of a sudden, I never did understand, of course, what happened. I failed that little grade because I still to this day don't care about academic school. And all of a sudden, I was a zero. So I walled right up, and I lost that. I forgot about lost that vision of saving the planet, and I started
Yeah.
trying to figure out how I could get people to love me. And what I used to watch
Mm.
movies because since I wasn't with my dad, uh, I was looking for a father figure. So I would watch movies, and I watched all the great actors of the day: John Wayne, James Cagney, and I have an entire list of those great actors in my bio on my website. So
Yeah.
I used to try to understand what it was to be a man from movies like that, and I was always searching for another father figure. And I noticed in the movies, the guy that everybody loved and was respected was fighters, and
Yeah.
I became a fighter. By the time I was in grade 8, I was the best fighter in the school, and I had opportunities to prove that from time to time. So the other reason I wanted to be a fighter was because I was scared. I was actually
Yeah.
a terrified little guy, and because when you're a little boy, when I failed, the older guys they used to want to beat me up or intimidate me. So I got walled up and angry, and I became a real tough guy. And I started martial art by the age of 13, and then formal lessons at the age of 16. I became a professional martial artist as an uchideshi under a great master of Aikido. Um, at the age of 18, I trained 5, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But I was
Wow.
also, folks, I was age, never could understand why life was the way it was, why people like girls avoided me like the plague. I just assumed I was the ugliest thing that ever walked on the earth. And I was like a loner. And that when I met the great master, the Japanese master, he became my father figure, who I really
Mm-hmm.
internalized, and that caused a lot of damage
Yeah.
because he was not the Buddha. You know, when I was a boy, it took me 8, 10 years to understand that he wasn't in any way, shape, or form a perfect guy. And I served him. See, I'm a samurai trained man, so
Yeah.
I'm not a commercial martial artist. So the word samurai means it comes from the root word saburo, which means to
Yeah.
serve.
Serve.
So I served the craft, I served him, and I continued to do that professionally all the way up to the year 2000. Now, what happened was I had an enlightenment experience. I went back to school at the age of 27. In that year, age 27, I was going to move to Japan for 5 years as a
Mm-hmm.
professional uchideshi in Tokyo. But I
Yeah.
was also full of rage. You have to understand real rage.
Yes.
So my dad died that year. I broke my right knee in half the beginning of that year. Dad died the middle of that year. And later in the year, before I was to move to Japan, I broke my back in half at '05,
Wow.
weightlifting.
Wow.
So I never made it to back to Japan to live there at the age of
Mm-hmm.
27. And that took me, I healed the back with meditation alone, no surgery,
Mm-hmm.
nothing like that. That's the beginning of my learning how to be a healer.
Yeah.
See, I healed my back in 12 weeks, and then it took a couple of years to undo all of the neurological adaptations. When you get hurt real
Yeah.
bad like that, your body makes all kinds of adaptations. But I started to learn and was introduced to world class doctors. The great George Goodhart Jr. was the man that I was with at that time. George Goodhart was the maybe the most brilliant man of his day. He's the founder of applied kinesiology, and I was one of his patients for like 16 years. So what's
Wow.
going on here is this, folks. basically I start apprenticing and internalizing samurai culture under a man named Takashi Kushida. He was the
Mm-hmm.
greatest Yoshinkai master of Aikido in the world. I'm studying manhood and learning the ethics and so forth of real samurai culture from him. Then,
Yeah.
because of my injuries, I start to meet these great master doctors. When I say master doctor, I mean a master doctor. He makes a regular MD look like an amoeba. You go down there, you have a problem, and he fixes it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the founder of Applied Kinesiology. So I start meeting these great men, and then from him, I met some of his top boys, like Dr. Lou Bovin and Alan Zadkin and Gary Klepper. So all of those
Mm-hmm.
men, they're like the creme de la creme de la creme of kinesiologists in the world. So I'm
Yeah.
learning about healing from all my severe injuries while I'm apprenticing in the Japanese crafts, and that's introducing me to Zen and so forth and so on. And I have nothing to do. I've never read a newspaper in my life. I've never watched media in my life, and I never will. I'm socialized completely differently,
Yeah.
and that's become my asset now. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I moved. I had an enlightenment experience in 1991 at the University of Windsor that lasted about 45 minutes. And when I came
Wow.
down from that state, all I knew was I had to leave Canada and move to California. So I
Mm-hmm.
had no money, I had nothing whatsoever. And I just got on the plane with a wooden sword, a wooden staff, and a knife. I said goodbye to everything I had ever known. And I
Mm-hmm.
landed in San Francisco. And I was very poor. I ate I think I was subsisting on one banana and a hamburger a day. And I was able to find 4 students. And
Wow.
I taught them sword in the park. I was 31 years old at the time. And then I got invited to meet a great Grand Sheikh, Maulana Sheikh
Mm-hmm.
Muhammad Nazim al Haqqani. He was the 21st Grand Master of the Naqshbandi Tariqat, and he's the Mufti of Cyprus. So this is a Muslim who is a real spiritual master. I'd never heard of a sheikh in my life, had no idea what any of that
Mm-hmm.
was. When I went to the airport to meet him. He was flying in, and he liked me very much, and I immediately loved him. And
Yeah.
meeting him was sort of like it looked like meeting Moses in the movies. Very amazing. So he prayed for me. He made he
Mm-hmm.
made a. I used to have a bicycle, and I was sleeping on floors and had nothing. And he prayed
Yeah.
for me that the divine would give me my own school where I could help people.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 week later, a guy showed up, American, gave me $40,000, and I built the
Wow.
Dosatsu Ken Dojo. And that's a true story. It sounds like a
Wow.
fairy tale, but it's a true story. And at that dojo, I taught United States Special Forces, military. I helped battered women recover from rape. I helped Alcoholics Anonymous. I lived in the dojo, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
professional. It was not a commercial dojo. It was the real was the real deal, and
Yeah.
we did old super high standard professional training. So that's where I had that dojo, and I thought nothing could ever. We built what we did was we rented a old factory, and
Mm-hmm.
me and my boys, my students, I call them my boys, they refurbished the whole thing, and then we were able to order the finest tatami mats from Europe. They
Yeah.
built me a Zen Buddhist built me a huge kamiza, my big shrine where I housed
Yeah.
my masters, and it was a magical life. And then one day, just at the beginning of the year 2000, the
Mm-hmm.
landlord died, and his son uh, broke the lease, and I was homeless in a matter of like 2 weeks. Lost everything I had, and that Oh, and during that time, I was with the sheikh, and I did a very austere, the inner mystical traditions of Islam for 4 years, and then I
Yeah.
left. I left that. Um, so when the year 2000 hit, and that landlord, when his son took my dojo away from me, that knocked the wind out of me, and it knocked the wind out of me for 2 years. And for the first time in my life since I was born, I lost my sense of direction. I didn't know
Mm.
what to do.
Yeah.
And they looked at Hollywood. I love fashion. I used to be a musician. I was a concert cellist, lead cellist in high school. Um, and a lot of guys thought I could act. And then I love interior design. There's all these different ideas. But the thing that
Yeah.
stood out was for me to become a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to successfully sue that landlord's son, and I took
Mm-hmm.
that money, and in my 40s I went back to school and I became a licensed chiropractor. I was licensed in Georgia and Tennessee. And
Wow.
during that time, after I left the dojo at the year 2000, I was able to apprentice under a series of great master doctors. And I
Mm-hmm.
never use the word master lightly, folks. I'm
Yeah.
not impressed by much. So when I say this, when I say that, I mean, so
Yeah.
I met the great master of Network Chiropractic, Lance Wright in Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
and he introduced me to Jeff Brittain. Dr. Brittain became one of my very best friends. He's in Houston, Texas, and when you think of those guys, I want you to imagine Yoda. I
Yeah.
mean, they transcend. They just transcend anything you
Yeah.
could ever imagine. And then I met Bob Rakowski, who's a world famous doctor. You can look him up, Dr. Bob Rakowski. If you go around the world 10 times, you won't find anybody better. You may find somebody as
Wow.
good, but you won't find anybody better. And then after I became a doc, I moved out of Texas back to, and I was married. I moved to Georgia, and that's where I met Larry Habersky. Larry is
Mm-hmm.
a grandmaster of the quantum field and of consciousness. He
Yeah.
was a top student of Ted Morter. Dr. Morter, who
Mm-hmm.
created BEST, bioenergetic synchronization technique. So I met Larry. He's in a world by himself. And I studied under him for 8 years. And that's where I learned
Wow.
the basis of the craft I have now. The other side of me is I'm a spiritual guide and teacher, and I have a empowerments through Tibet, through
Mm-hmm.
Padmasambhava, and through my Reiki masters, a tremendous man, two of them in Georgia. And then I was introduced to Shriyama Bhagavan, the great avatars of India,
Yeah.
at the beginning of 2013. And when I met them, I started receiving Diksha, a special kind of a blessing. It's an energy transfer from them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Larry was removing my cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
So that transformed me. Now, so that you understand cognitive dissonance, it
Yep.
basically means it's the way you function, okay, folks. We are controlled. 95% of your entire day and everything is controlled by the subconscious mind, not
Yes.
the frontal cortex. Frontal
Yes.
cortex is very weak. It only
Yeah.
processes 40 bits of information a second. Subconscious mind processes 40 million bits of information a second.
Yeah.
And the biggest trick of this, and I know Ken is familiar because we were talking before the show,
Yeah.
Mom, your subconscious mind starts, for me, in my model, it starts at the moment of conception and it goes
Mm-hmm.
right through the womb. And then when you're born up until the end of the age of 6, that subconscious mind of yours, all it's doing is recording 40 million bits of information per second, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
None of that information is yours. It's
Mm-hmm.
mom, dad, the television, grandma and grandpa, your brother, your sister, the dog. It's everything in your environment except
Yeah.
you. And that
Yeah.
is the software, all of the data, the beliefs, the perceptions. And then when your frontal cortex is finally developed enough neurologically at age 7, it kicks in. But when
Mm-hmm.
it kicks in, any thought you have or perception is played back against the data that's in the
Mm-hmm.
software.
Yeah.
And see, the trick to life, there's two laws of the universe that are the most important for us as human beings: the law of perception and the law of resonance. If you know those
Yeah.
two, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Perception gives you your vibration,
Yeah.
what your frequency you're transmitting and receiving. Whatever your primary dominant vibration is. Then by resonance, that brings you everything you have, everything you know, everybody you associate with, everything by resonance. The trick is the perception is from the subconscious programming. So
Mm-hmm.
cognitive dissonance means you go to school and you have some ideas and you want to go right, but your subconscious, there's a program from dad that says at the age of 3, you can't go right. It won't work.
Yep.
You can't do
Yeah.
that. And you will never be able to do it because the program that he gave you is 1 million times stronger than this one. You'll start
Yeah.
off just like a New Year's resolution,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 months, 1 week, 3 weeks later, it just dies on the vine. What I
Yeah.
do, what Dr. Habersky did for me, is I remove cognitive dissonance. That's what depth healing is fundamentally for. I do a great many other things, but fundamentally, if I remove the cognitive dissonance, you can do what you want to do. You can have
Mm-hmm.
what you want to have. You can heal the way you want to heal because the subconscious mind is endorsing what you want here.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like a condensed version.
Yeah. But it's a powerful explanation, and I'll explain in a minute. When
Okay.
that agreement happens, that agreement, in the Christian or the spiritual world, they call that fate. That agreement comes between you and you. And when you agree, it is the most powerful thing because once you agree and you release your words, as you said, Doc, it will manifest because
Mhm.
you came in line, and everything that you've been programmed and all that stuff just washed away. And when you begin to be you and begin to start that piece, this is powerful. I love your life journey because to me, it was a masterful orchestration, if you will, of someone that had a purpose to do something for us as human spirits, masterfully put together, meaning that your trainings from the onset with the Japanese mindset, and that's as much as it is a spiritual, a physical piece with the technique and all of those things, it is also highly spiritual. They
Mhm.
teach the aspect of being one, being centered, being present. You walk from
Mhm.
there and you went to all of these others, and the people that you were surrounding is absolutely your life and the life of everyone, Doc. I believe it's the life of everyone that is
Mhm.
called to be that servant is masterfully put together. Every situation that you endure in life is designed to make you stronger, wiser, smarter, if you understand and allow all of this training that you had as you moving through, and you were there with the the sages, some of the top sages within your movement as you began to move forward in life, and so it landed you with an absolute understanding of principles that you had just talked about, the subconscious mind and all of these aspects of things. I love hearing this stuff. So, any guys that are listening to us, man, I want you guys to pay attention. Doc has been um, laying it out, if you will, so that you can. Jesus makes a statement, Doc. He said, "Those who have ears, let them hear."
Mm.
That means that there's an other ear that you have to be listening with. And when you listen to Doc, every ounce of his journey, he were he was laying breadcrumbs about those principles that can deliver you from your dark place to your life. So I want you to talk to them, Doc, because
Okay.
um, I want you to first backtrack a little. Now you lost your dojo because that journey has to be something. That's a dark place right there. You said you lost your way, and
Mm.
having all of that intense training and still losing your way. I want people to understand that it doesn't matter who you are and what training you are, you still got to
Mhm.
find out about you. So, talk to me, Don, in that dark place right there. How did you start to recalibrate your yourself, your inner man, if you will, your soul part of you? How did
Okay.
you begin to
It's a
recalibrate?
hell of a,
Because
it's
that's
a
a
hell of a
painful
story.
place. Yeah.
Okay. And Ken, don't let me forget to tell you about the vision I had when I was 3, because
Yes,
I
I want to talk
that
about it.
vision's been answered now. But I'll
Yes.
come back to that. So to address what Ken's asking me to do for you, from the moment I was a little child, although I took the emotional hit when everyone abandoned me age 6, I was
Mm-hmm.
always like an arrow, and I always knew what I wanted to do. So I moved. Um, Once I set my mind on something, nothing stops me. Nothing has
Yeah.
ever stopped me. So I've had my
Yeah.
back broken. I've had 3 knee operations. I had breast cancer. I've had. Uh, there's been a great many things, but nothing's going to stop me. That's why the
Yeah.
military loved me. I'm sort
Yeah.
of like a George Patton. You give me a target, and I'm going to go one way or the other. So I
Yeah.
always had a vision and a purpose, and I followed that. And because that was my frequency, that's my
Mm-hmm.
vibration. It brought me these great masters and these powerful people. However,
Yeah.
there's a caveat to that. It brought me a great master to study under for martial art, yes, but Kushida was a um, clinical narcissist. I
Yeah.
don't mean narcissist in the popular um, way they use the word these days. I'm talking, he had real problems, and he
Yeah.
had a lot of anger and a lot of hurt in him. He eventually died a horrific death, young, from a type of cancer in the lungs from the energy of grief. Well, see,
Mm-hmm.
when I met him, think of the vibration that went along with me. I had my purpose, which was a high purpose, but I was filled with hurt because my family abandoned me. I had anger, hatred. I had and I was going to prove nobody was going to make me wrong anymore, because they see I lost everything, everyone and
Yeah.
everything, because they said I failed a test.
Yeah.
They made me wrong because of a piece of paper, and they
Yeah.
ignored me. So I was
Yeah.
a wounded person, and I attracted a wounded master. Okay,
Yeah.
and that all fell apart when I was the year of age 27. So in that year, I discovered a betrayal from him,
Mm-hmm.
which broke my heart. So I was going to move to Japan. Remember, I said nothing's going to stop me,
Yeah.
so I'm going to
No,
keep
that's gonna
going. I'm
stop.
going to
Yeah.
go to Japan itself, and I'm going to leave
Mm-hmm.
him.
Yeah.
But the divine and my life's destiny is not going to let that happen. So first,
Yeah.
my right knee breaks. I fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Then dad dies. I go through that, and then I broke my back in half, and that
Yeah.
stopped me. Now, why did it do that? It's because that amount of anger and that amount of dysfunction, I needed to be stopped.
Yeah.
I couldn't train. I needed time to process and to change.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
got through all of that. I graduated University of Windsor, and I moved to California, and I established one of the truly one of the finest representatives of Japanese Budo in the western part of the world. And then I lose it. Now, when I
Mm-hmm.
lost it, I didn't think anything on earth could take my dojo.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was my creation. That was my everything, and
Yeah.
it was all gone. And then when it
Yeah.
was gone, it was amazing. Nobody cared about me. They all cared
Yeah.
about me in Palo Alto. Was where outside my dojo was near Moffett Field, the
Yeah.
air base, and NASA. I
Mm-hmm.
used to teach NASA people there. Also, some of the scientists were my students. But as soon as I lost the dojo and I lost prestige and position, nobody
Yeah.
cared about me at all. So
Wow.
I was in complete shock.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really got mad. And I started to train to go into the cage as a submission fighter. All I wanted to do was beat the hell out of people. And that uh, my heart is one side, my anger is another. So my left knee completely let go. Whole
Yeah.
knee just fell apart, and I had to have it rebuilt. And that saved me from doing that. I never went into the
Yeah.
cage, which is a good thing. But I was lost. I was
Yeah.
completely in shock. I was homeless, reduced to a zero. I used to be, everyone called me sensei. I was the instructor to the SWAT team. A lot of the SWAT members of SWAT in Palo Alto Police Force. And all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, I was a zero, and I was in complete shock, folks. So what happened was I lost my way, and I finally, after the end of 2 years with the court cases, I went off to become a doctor. When I
Mm-hmm.
got there, I was even in more shock because
Yeah.
the chiropractic colleges have been bought out by the pharmaceutical industry, and
Yep.
everything that I knew, because I already knew what great chiropractic was and what great doctor.
Yeah.
When I got to the college and found out all the lies and the deception and the
Mm-hmm.
corruption,
Yeah.
so then I really got mad, and I lost my connection with the divine folks for nearly 20 years. And I
Wow.
was in a state of continual simmering rage. Now, if you understand what epigenetics is
Yeah.
the way, that is the mechanism by which genetics works. Okay, it all
Mm-hmm.
has to do with perception. So one of the best guys to talk about that is the founder of epigenetics, is Dr. Bruce Lipton. You can find
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of great stuff. He's one of my most favorite people. Well, anyway, I developed breast cancer. I developed cataracts on my eyes because I couldn't stand what I was seeing. So
Yeah.
epigenetically, my eyes crusted over with real heavy cataracts. My I had a little tiny fatty pocket that I had been born with in my right chest, and that became a cancer. We cut it out of me, and I never had to have any chemo. I never used medical anything, and I'm fine. But the cancer was the final word on my anger. See, at that point,
Mm-hmm.
that was my body saying
Yep.
either you solve the anger or you're going to die.
You can die.
So I
Yeah.
I had to solve that anger, and that's
Yeah.
where Larry Habersky came in, and that's where Shrama Bhagavan and the Diksha pulled me through that. Now that's late.
Mm-hmm.
I had I had the cancer pulled out of me in just before I moved to Thailand, 2015.
Wow.
So I want you to understand that the process you're listening to goes over decades.
Yes.
It goes
Yes.
over decades, and I'm applying myself and studying and learning all through. But
Yes.
I didn't. I refound the divine, and my rekindled me into the Dharma
Yeah.
when I was studying Reiki in Atlanta, Georgia. So we moved. Tammy and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia in 2007. I met Larry Oberski 2008, and I met this great Reiki master who became real close with me. I don't know, maybe 2010, something like that.
Hmm.
And one day he bought a new house and he invited me over, and he took me upstairs, and he was a student of the Dalai Lama and
Yeah.
of Tibetan Buddhism. I walked into that room. He had this prayer room, and it it reconnected me. But it had
Wow.
been nearly 20 years
Yeah.
of being lost, angry, and can't understand why things are the way that what. It was just all of a sudden the connection came,
Hmm.
and when that from that moment happened, everything started to make the shift so that I am who I am now and here. Um, and that's so when you're lost, or if you feel lost, you have to reconnect in somehow. And
Yeah.
what the first thing to reconnect with if you're lost is recognize where you are. You can never heal or change or do anything if you don't know your state now. So the first part
Hmm.
is awareness that I'm angry, or I'm a drunk, or my heart's closed, or I have no purpose. The first thing is to just acknowledge that and let it be. Don't judge it.
Yeah.
And then if you have the consciousness, ask the divine, ask your higher self, show me, give me a hand, show me,
Yeah.
and help me find what I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
and then let it happen. Things will start
Yeah.
to things will start to shift. But first you got to become aware of
Yeah.
where you're at. Don't judge it,
You.
but become
Yeah. You.
aware.
You have a statement in one of your. I was reading your the things that you have done, and there's so much. As I said, I was reading, and there's one thing that I read about, and I was like, I've got to mention this because this is a tremendous insight. It talks about Dr. G, how he teaches you how to interpret symptoms of the body
Mm.
as a language so that the cause could be known. And once that cause is known, once you've founded it, it can be cleared. And I love that because I've tried to tell people, I believe, Doc, that a lot of the trauma that you talked about, we label them, we call them cancer. And I was reading all the lists and we talked about it. They have names that we use to identify it, but it's trauma in whatever way it comes. And
Mhm.
that trauma, unless it is known, like you said, you got to get to the root of it. And once you
Mhm.
get to the root of it, it is clearly known then what you're dealing with, and you're able at that point to get your relief or your guidance to clear it. And you are talking
Mhm.
about principles that um, Reiki treatment and distance. And I tell people, and I deal because of my background is Christianity, and I use the Bible to show people that even Christ did what we would call Reiki, in the sense that he was in one location, and the man said to him, "Come to my house and heal my." Jesus asked him, "You want me to come to your house and heal your daughter?" He says, "No." I don't need you to come to my daughter. I just need you to speak the word, and I know that my daughter will be taken care of. And so he wasn't anywhere near that daughter, and that
Yeah.
daughter got her healing. And so I try to take away the mysticism out of people and tell them, wait a minute, guys, even the Christian, this is principle that is known through history in all religion, all belief system. But
Sure.
we and the medical field put this because they want you to become a servant to it. They don't deal with healing. But when it is located by someone who understands, it's talking about healing. You can only get your healing from the spiritual aspect of it and the soul part of it. I'll tell you why. Because I believe, just like you, Doc, those it's emotions trapped that manifest and into the form of cancer, arthritis, all of these other things is your emotion or trauma that is just locked and
That's
blocked,
right.
and it'll
That's right.
manifest somewhere in the body in all the different language and terminology that we use to identify cancer, chronic anxiety, all of those things is just a manifestation of something sitting there that once identified, and I love that, Doc. You have to identify it first. And when you identify
Yeah.
it, you're good.
You know, so it's comical to listen when you mention about Jesus. Of course. Um, so I guess let's see. How do I want to say that? Things like distance and that, folks, means absolutely nothing at all. So
Yeah.
now the mathematics has now been written and accepted in peer-reviewed journals, written by the great physicist, my favorite, Nassim Haramein.
Hmm.
And then you can, if you want to, if you can handle his languaging, it sometimes seems pretty complex, but basically what we're talking about is, and they'll use the word entanglement. So if
Hmm.
let's say you're on Pluto and you tell me, you call me up and you say, I got a migraine headache. And I say, okay, just signal me when it's gone. In 1 minute, I'll remove the headache for you. Because
Yeah.
I don't care if you're on Pluto. It doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Not even a little bit. Now, uh, all the great healers throughout history all know that, and they all just do it. Now
Hmm.
science is finally just catching up. Science
Catching
is
up.
way,
Yeah.
way, way behind
Yeah.
mysticism.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's nice that they can figure out how to explain it, but we're all 100% completely connected. And if you
Hmm.
first of all understand that, and if you need, for me to be able to transfer what I transfer, I have what's called empowerments.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? An empowerment means, let's take this. Let's take Reiki for instance. So there's three fundamental frequencies of Reiki, and when you start Reiki should always take 1 year for each level. They should never, these things where they tell you they're going to do it in a weekend. Try not to ever go to that because that's a little bit on the dangerous side. So what happens is when you start to learn Reiki, you the subtle energy field of our body. You have the gross body and the nervous
Hmm.
system and so forth,
Yeah.
and then there's a subtle energy body like the acupuncture meridian system that acupuncture
Yeah.
uses. Now, um, let's say a person, uh, their their capacity for handling or channeling energy is a 10.
Hmm.
When they get an empowerment internally, their energy, subtle energy system is upgraded so that
Hmm.
it can carry a stronger, higher energy
Yeah.
non-destructively. So
Yeah.
like, like let's say the wires in this house can only handle 110 volts. If we put 10,000 volts through the wires, it'll blow out all the circuits. So
Yeah.
when you get an empowerment, you are conditioned differently so that you can either transfer or receive, and it doesn't hurt you. Now, if you
Yes.
ever think that that's a joke, pick up the book by Gopi Krishna called Kundalini by
Mm-hmm.
Gopi Krishna. That poor man was meditating. He was just a young fella in India, and unfortunately, he had an activation of Kundalini energy, the real powerhouse that sits at the base of the spine. But unfortunately, it rose the wrong way,
Yeah.
and for the rest of that man's life, it came very close to killing him. He was disabled, for a large part of his entire life, and no one on earth. He traveled the length and breadth of all of India. No one could change it. No one could help him. You can't fool around with energy. But
Yeah.
so I have particular empowerments. I have two empowerments for the work I do. Because I use two different kinds of frequencies. I use destructive interference waves. It, that's a quantum physics term. That's for
Mm-hmm.
removing a negative belief or a negative imprint or something that needs to be removed for you.
Yeah.
If you have a chronic disease, I'm going to disintegrate it with destructive interference waves. And then there's constructive interference waves, which build you up.
Mm-hmm.
And that I have my empowerment is through India. And then I have empowerments through Reiki. So I have the
Yeah.
three kinds. But all an empowerment means is I have extra ability or a
Yeah.
stronger ability to transfer something to you than the average guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that means.
Yeah.
And I
The
have the
Bible calls it
ability to talk.
The Christians call it Dr. G. They call it the anointing. So
Yeah,
as you're talking, I'm thinking about it because if you read some of the Old Testament, there's these two relationship with these two prophets, and one said, Elisha said, "If you see me leave and my mantle falls, that anointing will be on you," and that was that energy that you talk about to be able to do things. Um,
uh-huh.
and it is in, I tell people, it is in every single religion. Just look closely.
Yes,
They use different terminology to explain what it is, but
yes,
the principle is the same. Talk to us about this
yes.
vision that this young 3-year-old gentleman had about this rocket ship and getting all the animals and all the people on this rocket ship to take us to safety.
Okay. So as I was studying under with Larry Habersky,
Hmm.
he started talking to me one day, I think in 2008, and all of a sudden the inspiration came because that's the divine
Yeah,
uh, talks to me all the time.
yeah,
So what over these period of time, and I'm actively doing this now professionally, I'm able to use morphic field physics so that I can take up to 21,000 people
hmm,
at one time, like say a whole football stadium, and I
hmm,
can heal them at the same time as a collective.
hmm,
Now, everything in the universe runs on morphic fields. It's a numbers game. That's where the power.
yeah,
That's why Jesus said, "Whenever two or more are gathered in my name, you will have
yeah,
more power."
hmm,
Well, now when I say I can heal them, what I mean is I am able to uh, take the entire field of all that collective, and then I can. Let me use a computer analogy. If you have 100 laptops, that's a
hmm,
hundred people.
yeah,
The software of each of the 100 computers is represents their subconscious mind's database.
Mm-hmm.
The cloud, all of
Yeah.
the 100 computers are tied into the cloud.
Yeah.
The cloud is the morphic field
Mm-hmm.
that's connected to and generated by the 100 computers.
Yeah.
What I can do is, relative to a specific question, I can tie into all 100 computers at the same time from the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
I can find the problem that's common to all 100 computers, and I can remove it at the same time via the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So what I can do, see, when you if you think of the little boy, the vision is I'm able to help or save collectives,
Yeah.
huge numbers.
Yeah.
So um, now you guys are all watching morphic field physics when it comes to the pandemic, or I like to call it the scamdemic. So what
Yeah.
they did was they pre-programmed everyone, the globally, the subconscious mind, regarding for fear of
Mm-hmm.
disease. Okay,
Yeah.
I remember when I'm 66. When I was only in grade 6 in Windsor, Ontario, I remember distinctly in the science class them explaining what a pandemic was and an
Mm-hmm.
epidemic and how we would all, and they were already programming at that time. So they programmed the kids, the parents, and generation. So the
Yeah.
programming's there. Then when they wanted to take over the world, all they do is initiate the COVID nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
That initiates the fear.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody complies, and in a matter of days, they were able to shut down the entire world.
Yeah.
So it's a military operation, but basically what you're looking at is a morphic field using the fundamental frequency of fear as the control factor. Now,
Yeah.
when we can make a healing morphic field of that's based in love or gratitude, which are the highest frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And if the morphic field is big enough, you can punch a hole in their field because
Yeah.
the higher frequency dominates. The
Yeah.
problem is uh, they have all of the sophistication. They know how to do cognitive priming. That's why they make them wear the mask.
Yeah.
The the cognitive priming is coming through all the forms of the media. Seeing a mask, here in Thailand,
Yeah. Yeah.
every single one of them, they wear those masks,
Yeah.
and uh, the consciousness level is in my opinion is like zero.
Yeah.
So they can control the whole populace, and then the field dominates consciousness, folks. It dominates behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you've all heard or seen a Western movie where the small town, something happens, they think they got the right guy and they're going to hang him,
Yeah.
and the whole crowd becomes a lynch, what they call a lynch mob.
Next month.
Well,
Yeah.
what you're looking at is a morphic field that's generating an anger and a real ugly energy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
contagious.
Yeah.
That's what a morphic field. So now I actually can do that and get real time results, and that's very exciting to me that I can
Yeah.
help large collectives of people
Yeah. That is
at one
awesome. That
time.
is powerful. I think you were trained to do it. And as I
Mhm.
mentioned, your entire life was that school from one discipline to another, because each teacher, if you look at it, Dr. G, was a different discipline. And you even went into the natural, physical, I guess, field of study in medicine when you went into your chiropractic. So you were dancing through your life within all these disciplines. And so to have you be able to now synergize, if you will, all of those disciplines to create your your process. And that's what I tell people. The journey is so that you can, once you begin to dance within all of these disciplines, whatever, whoever you are in a discipline because it's the belief system that you're in. And then you're able to take it and formulate it by which now you are going to serve. You are going to be that servant. And to be able to
Yep.
serve at that level, Doc, that's the key because I believe every word that you said. And that's why you see when you have quote unquote congregation of people, whether it's in a church, whether it's in a football field, wherever, you,
Mm-hmm.
as you were stating, you can sense that energy based on the response of all those people. And so, yeah, if you have 20,000 people and they are beginning to meditate, if you will, on a and pulling that higher frequency, you'll be able, as you said, through the cloud, and if you have a virus, whatever that virus is, chronic disease, stress, anxiety, all of these viruses, as you are able to, through the cloud, be able to administer that, that virus protection so that you can have your clean computer again. And that's what Doc is about. And this is his life. And all of you guys that are listening to this conversation, I am absolutely floored um, at having this conversation and listening to Doc, and the insights that he has is absolutely 100% exactly what you need. I don't care what you're going through today. His ministry, if you will, his insights, his revelation is exactly what you need to help you or move you through from one belief system to another. Shift in perspective. It will
Mm-hmm.
change your life. That shift in your perspective, as he talks about, when you get into agreement, your subconscious and all of it. When you get into agreement, man, that's when the real stuff happened. And Doc is able to guide you because he was exposed to all of the different disciplines to extract the key pieces that will get you to where you need to be faster than you would get there if you did not have him in your space. And I want you guys to get into his space because I'm going to provide everything for you to get there. So, Doc, talk to us about this because now here I am. I'm your patient. I want you to walk us through one of your patients. I know you talk about every
Okay.
aspect. You talk about financial situation being broke because you were broke. And I tell people you go through these things
For
because when
years.
he speaks about it, when Doc speaks about it, the energy that he releases out from his being, he believes everything that he's saying, and that is pure power. Why? Because he went through it. And what he
Yep.
is telling you is exactly what you need to do to come through. Walk us through. I'm a patient, Doc. Let's say
Okay.
I'm going to try and see if I could pick something really difficult, but to you it's
Okay.
simple. But to the masses out there, it's going to look, it may seem difficult to them. I am suffering from behavioral problems. I'm all over the place. I showed up at your office and I'm like, Doc, I don't know I don't know what I'm doing on this planet. Why am I here? And all that kind of stuff. And you know how they come because we were there. We know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what they went. And so here is this person. He is suffering. Yours was anger, and you learned how to manage that and so forth. I might be depression, Doc. I am absolutely, I come to you, I suffer from depression and anxiety. That is a big thing out there today. So here I am, I present to you. Walk me
Mm-hmm.
through, and I know this, guys, he's just giving us a baseline, but you have to be in his space for and as you be in his space, because he has to shift you based on your belief. He has to walk with you, hold your hand, and so that he can move you through from one perspective because you're coming to him with one, you're coming to him as a depressed, anxiety filled. You believe that, and that's your belief, and that's why you are, that's who you are. So now you're coming to him to have him shift you. So you're going to need to be more than one visit, is what I'm saying. So Doc, here I am. I'm in your office, not even in your office. You are there in
Yeah, you're just
Shanghai.
online.
I'm here in on Koh Samui, and we are on the Zoom call, and I am all a mess, and I'm talking to you. Walk us through the listeners as to how first is that encounter, and how do you move that individual from A to B?
Okay, no problem. So first off, so you know that my sessions usually take me 2 hours minimum. And
Hmm.
so the first hour, what I'm going to be doing is gathering information. So what I would say to you first and foremost is, okay, so to give me, let's back up for a minute. What's your name? What's your mom's name? So I did
Yvonne?
mom,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and I did, and is she still alive?
And no, both my parents have passed.
Oh, is that right? I'm sorry. So, how did your mother die?
She died at home with, let's see, she was diabetic kidney, and she chose to pass on to the next. She said she was finished, and so she made a decision that she wanted to go, and so the kidney failed, and that's how the process. Being a physician, you know how
Now,
that goes.
were you expecting her to die, or was that a shock?
Um, we were expecting it. We knew. I actually went to her and asked her what she wanted to do. Did she want to continue? Because I would
Okay.
walk with her either based on her decision. And she said, no, I want to exit. So that was a
Now,
privilege I got to
okay.
experience.
Now, how old were you when she died?
I was in my 50s, 50, 57, somewhere around there.
Okay, all right. And then, how about your dad?
My
When
dad
did he
was
die?
uh, 2 years ago, but I
Two
wasn't there
years.
to see. And but we talked again. Again, we had a conversation a few days before, and he also had made his decision, and so I was able to walk with him based on his decision,
Okay.
even when he got
So
into hospital. So I was
so
there.
no shocks. Mom and dad,
No,
when
no,
they died, you knew they were going to. Okay. And then,
yeah.
your depression, the anxiety and depression you have. When try to remember exactly when did this all start where you started feeling like that?
Well, I'm giving you an example. I don't think I have one of those, but let's see. I'll go with it. Um, I
About what? How long? What? How long? What age or how long ago was it when it first started?
This depression.
Yeah.
Um, I have never really battled it, Doc. I was just giving you an example to see if we could of a
Oh, yeah. No, I thought we're
yeah.
role playing. Because what I'm
Yeah,
going to do is I'm going to
I'm
find
trying to
out
think
when.
of let's say this is something that this person has been dealing with from childhood, because it's usually a trauma that started there, like yours with the test that was
Hmm.
caused your dad and everyone to abandon you. Let's say this was a young child. They started their trauma, experiencing that trauma at 6 years old, stuff like that. I remember being
Okay.
depressed at that time.
So tell me what was going on, what happened at 6 years old, what was going on, and what happened.
My parents were fighting all the time and arguing, and they had a big fight in the room, and I saw it, and that caused me to be depressed. That my parents were always at war, if you will.
Was there any kind of physical violence in the fight?
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, and how you were how old? 6 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I hear that, folks, I'll talk to the audience. What I'm going to be looking for is if he takes a heavy shock there, like how he perceived it, and if there's a SEMO. SEMO means sympathetic emotional memory override. So sometimes if we're really shocked heavily by an emotional hit of some kind of trauma, the mind will freeze frame it, and
Yeah.
it'll stay alive until it's shut off. And that's one of the things that I would do. It's, you can think of it like a post-traumatic stress syndrome. So what I
Yeah.
would do in the case of that he's giving me is I'm going to search out all of the details of home life with mom and dad,
Mm-hmm.
what age, what they saw, how it happened, and then I'm going to erase all that. I go
Mm-hmm.
into the subconscious and I remove it to zero. And when I say I remove it, I mean it's gone. I
Yeah.
will disassemble and completely remove it from their field. And I will continue working on him all the way through. If I find some kind of a repeating pattern, I will go into, there's 10 programs that control human life. I'll tell you what they are in a second. And I will find out at which program he got the very first download that gives him this kind of perception leading to the depression or the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hold on, Doc.
Yeah, I could still see
I
you.
gotta.
I
Okay,
could
I
still.
gotta plug this thing in. It says low battery. I didn't think it would do that.
I can still
So
hear
what
you.
I've got to do is
Yeah.
it's a situation where I'm going to be continuously going through to find all of the negative perceptions, the impacts, and so forth and so on. And then I am going to remove them. Every time
Mm-hmm.
I remove them, I got to adjust myself here because we're right.
Yeah.
I didn't think that thing could drain that fast. Um, every time I'm removing, one of the keys to my system is this. The universe doesn't like a vacuum. So when I take out a negative,
Mm-hmm.
I remove a let's say a horrible vision of say the father, his father say hits the mom.
Yeah.
When I'm erasing that, I have their system or their body, their subconscious talks to me. I have a
Yeah.
sophisticated, very accurate way of speaking to their subconscious and to the field, so that I
Mm-hmm.
get accurate information. So I'm removing, and then their mind and their spirit and everything tells me what positive frequency do I put in its place, and also
Yeah.
at what level. The way I find the level of integration they need is through the chakra system.
Yeah.
So I'm erasing and replacing, erasing, replace. So every time I'm doing that, their brain is uh, completely changing. All of the neural
Mm-hmm.
nets are changing. Everything is adapting. And then as I'm putting in the positives, I'm upgrading their consciousness and elevating their, evolving their system. So as
Yeah.
when I'm doing that, that's a profound process. It's very,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the fundamental basis for depth healing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, basically he's presenting, he's depressed, he's got anxiety. I got to
Yeah.
find out where that first began,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to remove the foundations
Yeah.
that hold up the perceptions he has now
Mm-hmm.
as a grown man. Then when I remove the foundation and it's gone, I come back up to the present moment at the present
Yeah.
life now. I find out what's happening here, and I remove that in the present time. So I go way back.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 10 programs I mentioned are, the first program is past lives.
Mm-hmm.
Second program is genetic inheritance, which extends all the way back to the beginning. So everyone
Yeah.
on your mother's line to the
Yeah.
beginning of time, everyone on your father's line, beginning of time. Third program is the moment of conception, which is
Hmm.
very critical. And if you want me to give you details, I'll explain to you just how critical it really is. Then all of the trimesters
Hmm.
while you're in the womb, then the birth itself,
Yeah.
and then the first 6 hours of birth.
Wow.
The fourth program is from the first 6 hours of birth to the end of the age of 6. And the
Hmm.
fifth program is age 7 until whatever age you are now. The
Hmm.
sixth program is the collective global program of all of the world, which also includes plants and animals, not just human life.
Yeah.
The seventh program is the great astrological solar system. Eighth program is the galactic system. Ninth program is the universal system. And the 10th program is what's called the other realms. That's where
Yeah.
Jesus comes from and lives, and
Yeah.
all the other, when you talk about the divine.
Yeah.
Now, the moment of conception is especially important because um, it sets up just about everything. So what is that? What
Yeah.
do I mean by that? At the moment of conception, the mindset and the attitude and the beliefs of the father and the mindset, attitude, beliefs of the mom
Hmm.
at the moment that the sperm is when they're making love, the sperm hits the egg.
Hmm.
Their geophysical place, like let's say let's say there's a difference between making ceremonious love to conceive a child in Machu Picchu versus on the
Yeah.
hood of a car when you're stone
Yeah.
drunk at a park. So
Yeah.
at that moment, past lives by resonance, see,
Hmm.
everything's resonance,
Yeah.
past lives are drawn in. Genetic expression that's going to occur over time as you're alive, that's drawn in. The alignment of the planets at the moment of that conception. Everyone
Yeah.
in astrology knows the moment when you were born, but
Yeah.
no one can tell all of those things are all go into us. And then what we know from science, once we are conceived, usually science will think both after the first trimester, the subconscious mind activates,
Yeah.
and we're more familiar with that. But everything, it's not that simple. And then all of those different influences um, make the destinies and the blueprints and the patterns. The good news is they can all be adjusted. They can all be
Yeah.
changed. That's what
Yeah.
happened to me. See, I
Yeah.
had my programs rewritten for me in a special process with the divine, and I went from being a poor man to being a very wealthy man. I live
Yeah.
a very luxurious life here in Thailand, but I was dirt poor, folks, for well over 20 years. Nothing
Yeah.
worked for me because of
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance. See, Dr. Albersky, I grew up, my dad had poverty consciousness because he was born the son of Polish immigrants during the
Hmm.
Great Depression. So,
Wow.
he grew up tough, and they had nothing. And although my dad was a very successful electrician and so forth, we always had money. But my dad had lack poverty consciousness, and I was programmed that way. And then
Yeah.
even though I became a big shot doctor and a big shot martial arts sensei, I never made money. I never had any
Hmm.
kind of success in the material world
Yeah.
until the cognitive dissonance was gone.
Yeah.
Once it was gone, um, I don't have any worries with that at all. Can you please excuse me? I want to get a chair because
Yeah.
I had to shift to this other place where I have the power.
Again, guys who are listening to us, I implore you to get in touch with Doc because he is. I'm so glad that he presented because he's here to help and to serve. And
That's
get
all I
yourself
do.
into his private to become one of his private clients so that he can walk with you. He says to a couple of hours. Most of you will take a lifetime to accomplish what he's talking about in a couple of hours, and some people never get a chance to accomplish what he just talked about their entire life. They never got a chance to come out and to change their mindset and to change their destiny. And so I want to encourage all of you guys that are listening to us today. This has been one of my favorite conversation, if you will, and I've had
Oh, thank you very much.
hundreds of them. I've had, I mean, just maybe close to a couple thousands. I've done these things for several years, and your
Wow.
insight and your wisdom. I just want to tell anyone that is listening from wherever you are, I'm going to present all of Doc's information so that you can get into his space, get into his class, get into get his books, get everything you can get, drink of him, and begin to, as they say, you become disciples. A lot of people, I tell people, don't hurry up to be a member. Members don't do nothing, they just sit there. When you come into someone's space, come in to be a disciple, because a disciple will change the world. They are the ones that are affected by the conversation between that individual. The members, all they do is to get to some a little crumbs of the conversation. But the disciple, they come out with the meal, and once they digest it, they can now. I am sure Dr. G wouldn't mind one of his disciples take his work to a different level that he can never take it because you digested it. So find yourself in his presence, sit at his feet, and become free from where you're at. And so that you can become this new you. Doc, I want to thank you so much for coming at Threads of
Oh,
Enlightenment.
this has really been a pleasure, Ken. Since you're in Costa Mesa, maybe one of these days we can get together.
Oh,
That'd
we are
really be
definitely
great.
going to get together.
Yeah.
I have to run out to. I was heading out to Vietnam, and then I'm going to be back, and I wanna connect.
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So Doc. This has been fantastic. It really has. And we are definitely going to stay in touch, and we are definitely going to meet. We're going to spend a lot of time together because
I'd
I
love to.
want to be a part of your space so that I can become one of those disciples, and also be able to be effective and assist you with your journey as a servant to bring others
Oh,
along so
that's
that
really
they can
kind of
come
you,
on.
Ken.
You know.
That's primarily what I'm trying to do. If I can, I just need. I love people,
Yeah.
and hopefully I'm going to be able to work with collectives, and then of course privates, and
Yeah.
I just love it, and because the world right now they need
They
they
need
need
it.
so much help.
Yeah.
They just need
Yeah.
so much help. They're so scared. I
Yeah.
love to see proud, happy, successful people who are enjoying their life.
Yeah.
You know, not
That's
not just living in fear or
yeah.
restriction, and
Yeah.
they're so scared. Everybody, they're so scared. And it's just programming.
Yeah.
Just
They
programming.
they're terrified, and it is, as you said, it is the fearfulness is the baseline by which they begin to control the collective, if you will, and it is it's the only way. The politicians speak it. Every one of them, the healthcare system speak it. They tell
Uh,
you about this fearfulness to keep you buying stuff that will never heal you. Um,
it's disgusting.